All right, today we're jumping into the work of one of anthropology's heavyweights, Claude Lévi-Strauss, and we're going to try to decode the very blueprint of human culture through his theory of structuralism.
So let's just start with the huge question that drove his entire life's work. No matter how incredibly different they seem on the surface, do all human cultures, from ancient tribes to massive modern cities, actually follow the same hidden set of rules?
So first up, we need to get inside Lévi-Strauss's mission, which is basically to find and decode this hidden blueprint of all human cultures.
So who was this guy? Well, Claude Lévi-Strauss was a French anthropologist with a pretty radical idea. He looked at the amazing, stunning diversity of cultures all over the world and said, you know what? This isn't random. He argued that it's all just different expressions of the same underlying structures hardwired into the human mind.
And that brings us right to the core of his theory, which you could call the mind's blueprint.
That blueprint is a theory called structuralism. And the big idea here is that there are universal patterns of human thought, deep down in our subconscious, that actually shape everything we call culture. Our myths, our family rules, our art. It's not about the specific details on the surface, it's all about the hidden system underneath.
Now, for any of this to work, you have to buy into one really foundational idea, what's known as the psychic unity of mankind. It's basically the principle that, hey, despite all our surface-level differences, our brains are all fundamentally wired the same way. We're all running on the same basic psychological hardware.
Okay, so if our minds are all running on the same hardware, how does that hardware actually work? For Lévi-Strauss, the most basic function of the human mind is to think in pairs of opposites. He called them binary opposites. Just think about it. Our minds love to do this. The most obvious example? Day versus night. You can't really understand one without the other, right? Their meaning depends entirely on the contrast between them. And this isn't just for simple physical things. It applies to huge abstract concepts too, like good versus evil. We build our entire moral and ethical world around these kinds of fundamental contrasts.
And that leads us to what Lévi-Strauss thought was the most important, the most fundamental binary of them all, the opposition between nature and culture. He believed this very distinction is what sparks the creation of human society in the first place.
So let's see how this actually works in the real world. How can a simple pair of opposites create the complex rules of our relationships and, well, society itself?
Well, let's look at the puzzle. Why is it that almost every single human society we know of, across all of history and all over the globe, has a powerful taboo against incest?
For Lévi-Strauss, the answer was structural. He saw the incest taboo as this incredibly powerful rule that creates a simple binary: kin versus non-kin. People you can't marry and people you can. By forcing families to marry outside their own group, this one simple rule makes alliances and exchange necessary, and that is what weaves the very fabric of society. It's the engine that pushes us from the natural family unit into culture.
And this isn't just a theory. You can see it in practice. Take the Munda society in India. Their entire social world is built on a binary. The village is split into two groups, and you are forbidden from marrying someone from your own group. That one opposition dictates pretty much everything.
Okay, so this structural logic seems to work for things like kinship, which have clear rules. But what about something that seems totally illogical and chaotic, like myths? Well, let's dive into the logic of myth.
Now, this was a totally revolutionary idea. For Lévi-Strauss, myths are not just primitive fairy tales. He saw them as highly sophisticated logical tools, ways a culture collectively thinks through its deepest and most difficult contradictions, like the tension between life and death. In fact, he found that myths from all over the world tend to follow the same hidden formula. They start with a situation, then a complication is introduced that throws everything off balance, which leads to a resolution. But often, there's a final twist or rider at the end that kind of sets the stage for the whole cycle to start over.
He even had a name for the essential building blocks of these myths: mythemes. And here is the truly mind-bending part. A single mytheme, like a hero slays a monster, has no meaning on its own. It only gets its significance from its position in the story and its relationship to all the other mythemes. It's the pattern, not the parts, that holds the meaning.
So as you can see, this was a massive, revolutionary way of looking at humanity. It offered this grand, unifying theory. But, as you can probably guess, it also has a pretty controversial legacy.
On one hand, Lévi-Strauss gave us this powerful new lens for seeing the fundamental unity of the human mind. But on the other hand, this relentless search for deep, universal structures came with some major blind spots.
Critics really pushed back, and they raised some big issues.
They said his theories were way too abstract, maybe even impossible to prove, and that by focusing so much on these universal mental structures, he was basically ignoring history, individual choices, and all the unique richness that actually makes each culture different.
And this all leaves us with the big, provocative question that people are still debating today. Is there a universal human mind, a shared blueprint that structures all our societies? Or does our culture, our language, and our history make us so fundamentally different that no single theory could ever hope to explain us all?